This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello and welcome to Daughterhood, the podcast. I am your host, Roseanne Corcoran, Daughterhood Circle Leader and Primary Caregiver. Daughterhood is the creation of Ann Tumlinson, who has worked on the front lines in the healthcare field for many years and has seen the multitude of challenges caregivers face. Our mission is to support and build confidence in women who are managing their parents' care. Daughterhood is what happens when we put our lives on hold to take care of our parents. We recognize this care is too much for one person to handle alone. We want to help you see your efforts are not only good enough, they are actually heroic. Our podcast goal is to bring you some insight into navigating the healthcare system, provide resources for you as a caregiver as well as for you as a person, and help you know that you don't have to endure this on your own. Join me in Daughterhood. Today my guest is Carol Giuliani, the owner of Senior Travel Companion Services. Carol provides customized trip planning and travel escort services for seniors and couples. She has planned and executed over 125 domestic and international trips through all 50 states and across the globe. In this episode, Carol and I discuss tips for traveling with your care partner, everything from how to plan your trip, which airlines and resources can assist best, how to handle long car rides, traveling with medical equipment, and everything in between. I hope you enjoy our conversation. There are so many responsibilities that inherently come with caregiving, and then a trip comes into play to add more stress. Carol, how do we prepare for this?
Well, like any other trip, you have to first figure out your timing on it. And the sooner you get started on any kind of trip, the better prepared you're going to be. With seniors especially, or people with any kind of disability, mobility issues, disabilities, whether they be physical or mental, the more preparation, the better. So as I book trips for seniors and disabled people, I get going as soon as I get the word that they need to be helped out, and I will start planning the logistics.
Sure.
Also, you get a better deal when you're planning a trip, especially on airfare, if you plan it in advance. Even if you don't necessarily book a flight well in advance, you can find out what the airfares are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have some flexibility, it's even better because then you can look at some dates and figure out when the best time of year is to go somewhere if you've got that opportunity, or just what days of the week you want to go, and work a little bit around that, and get some better pricing and figure out what it's going to cost. Some people who haven't traveled much have a kind of pie in the sky idea that, a couple $1,000s are going to get them around the world. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but oftentimes that's not the case.
Right.
So just doing a little groundwork in advance, figuring out where you're going to want to go, what it's going to involve. If you're going to do a large overseas trip, doing 4 or 5 countries is never a good idea. Maybe 2. And certainly if you have, I don't do any more than that anymore these days. And who you're going to go with is very important also. So line up your people, line up your idea where you want to go, keep it limited and have some flexibility with it. And once you get started, the pieces will start to fall into place.
So that's interesting. And I love limited but flexible. I love that. And
absolutely.
What is the process of going through? You're looking at the website, and then when it comes to booking, there's lots of options on the plane, right? So where do you advise people when they're traveling with someone who needs some sort of assistance? What do you advise them?
Okay, well, as a professional travel companion, I'm a subscriber to a lot of different websites.
Okay.
And a lot of them say kind of the same thing to just get a general idea about the timing on your trip, to plan that first. And once you have the flights down, don't get your dates locked in and then book your hotels and everything else and then go, oh, now I'm getting my flights. Uh, so do it the other way around. Find out, what is the goal and the purpose of your trip.
Okay.
And you've got to be focused on what you want to really accomplish with this trip.
Right.
When you want this trip to happen, what you want to accomplish with this trip. So I have that a little bit of information, and then I start to find out what needs need to be met. So if there's physical disabilities, what's the accessibility of that place? Some places I can do some research, find out whether or not that's going to be a good place. Some places are really surprising. I took a woman to Ecuador, and we were able to go whitewater rafting and strap her wheelchair to the raft, give her an oar, and take her down a river. So
Really?
I mean, I hired an agency to help us do that. There are some incredible agencies out there that can do some, scuba diving, zip lining for people that have some disabilities, old and young. So, I mean,
Wow.
you'd be surprised what is coming up in hospitality and tourism now for folks that have even dementia. Dementia cruises are amazing these days. The cruises designed for people with dementia and their caregivers. So,
Wow.
so find the purpose, find the people, find an idea about the date and where you want to go, and then you start with that and your budget, of course. What's it going to look like?
Right.
Is this going to be a first class all the way, or is this going to be, let's explore nature? And we're not probably going to be camping generally at this stage in your life, but I'm fine staying in, modest digs. That's fine for me, and a lot of people want to do that. I've stayed in hostels before during my transportation back and forth. Not youth hostels where I'm bunking with people and sharing a bathroom, but
Right.
there are private rooms in private, with private bathrooms. Think outside the box a little bit. Mhm.
Right. Right. Well, and it's great that there is so much accessibility.
Yeah, yeah, there is. The world is blowing up. They know that folks with disabilities, mental or physical, are out there. They want to travel and they're spending money. And especially some communities and states are really putting a lot of time, energy, and money into advertising and showing the world that they want you to come and visit. Florida and Oregon is really going crazy on this. Yeah,
Well, it's about time.
it is. It
It's
is.
about
Yeah.
time. So when you're booking on the flight, obviously, do you want the bulkhead? Do you want the like how are you picking the best location in that plane for yourselves?
Well, first of all, you've got to find the airline that's going to accommodate you. Generally, I look for an airline that's got a fairly good reputation. Delta is one of them that is pretty good. United, American, I've had mixed results. I mean, every airline can break your wheelchair and cause problems. You have to know what to do about that. I have a little more trouble, of course, with the low cost carriers, Spirit and Frontier and Allegiant. Sometimes they can have the most wonderful people working for them, but they can be a little more challenging. Southwest can be fine. Southwest actually is interesting because not only can you bring pretty much as much luggage as you possibly can carry with you for free, but they have something called a person of size policy. So if you're a larger individual, you can buy two seats in advance and then let them know that you're subscribing to this policy. And then after the flight, you will ask for a refund and they will give you the money back for the second seat. Um,
Really?
they don't really advertise this very much, but
Wow.
yeah, that's a interesting policy they have. Alaska does that on a limited basis. They will refund the second seat if it wasn't going to be purchased by somebody else.
Right,
Um,
right.
and on the Canadian Airlines, you can actually have your caregiver be allowed to have a seat for free. So,
Really?
yeah, the United States doesn't do that, but in Canada, and I don't know what other airlines, I think Air Canada does do some kind of service like that. So check those things out. Sometimes other countries do have some perks for carers that go along.
That's wild. That's great. What's the name of that program for Southwest again?
It's just person of size.
Okay.
I believe they still have that. Last time I looked, they did. I have that on my website, one of those travel tips. So yes, and under the is it the access to airlines, AAC, it says that and someone with a disability, when you contact the airline, you ask them for a seat. You call up as soon as you book your tickets and you say, I've got somebody with a disability. I'd like a seat as close to the front as possible. So they will put you in a seat up front, and they do reserve those seats without you having to pay an extra fee for that. So not only do you board early, so you can always say when they call for boarding and say people with a disability come up front, you go up front and you board early on Southwest or Delta or anybody. But you call immediately when you get your seat aside, when you get your seat or when you get your plane ticket and say, I'd like a seat up front and get your seat assignment. And if they give you any trouble, talk to a supervisor. But
Okay.
and you get seated next to your individual without having to pay the extra fee for that.
That's
Okay.
fantastic. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's great. And it is called the Air Carrier Access Act.
Thank you.
You're welcome. ACAA. Yep.
Right. That
Wow.
always trips me up for some reason. Um,
Wow. That's wild.
anyway,
That's great.
that's a good one for you. I do like the bulkhead seats, although if you have equipment like any kind of battery operated stuff, I took a gentleman who was a quadriplegic and we could not put him in a bulkhead seat because he had equipment and you can't put that in a bulkhead. So you have to sit a row back. And also the bulkhead seats do not have movable armrests.
Okay.
So if you want to be able to transfer from an aisle chair into a seat with a transfer border, just slide over and you can't, get up and transfer on your own, then you have to be aware of the fact that those bulkhead seats may not have a movable armrest. So
Okay.
find out what kind of seating they have, and you can talk to the folks on the plane. It depends on a lot on which airplane you're going to be on. You
Sure.
know, a lot of times it's worth it to pay for first class to get that good seat up front because sometimes your wheelchair can get even right onto the airplane. Then all you have to do is pivot and get onto the first class seat,
Oh, wow.
not worry about it. On a couple of occasions, I've purchased an extra seat, especially on American Airlines, where it was kind of tight, and getting two first class seats was going to be very expensive. So
Hmm.
I purchased an extra seat when I was on board with a woman who needed the extra space, and I'm not a skinny mini myself, so I wanted some room to be able to move around. And that was the cost of three seats was a lot less than two first class seats up front. Yeah. So there's ways to get a good seat assignment on an airplane.
That's
Mhm.
great to know. And you just call the airline and talk to them about this beforehand. You're calling and specifically saying, "This is my situation and how can you help me?"
Yes. Uh-huh. I
Okay.
would do that as soon as you book your flight.
Okay.
Mhm. You can do some of it online. You can get wheelchair assistance online, but
Hmm.
there's always a special needs line for folks that they can call immediately. I was just on the phone today to make arrangements for a flight next week with a woman who's going to need oxygen on the plane. So they talked me through what exactly I needed. And I knew I needed a form, and I had the form filled out by the doctor a while back, but they wanted to make sure that that form, that information was to them 2 days in advance. So that's what's happening now with that.
That's great. That's great. And it's not. I know some people would be hesitant to call and say we have special needs, and I'm thinking you need to put that aside. Correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if you're special, you're special. And aren't we all a little bit special?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
So, and they want to know, they want you to know what's going on.
That's great information, Carol.
Thanks. And the other thing before I get going on much of anything else is I
Yeah,
want to talk a bit about the sunflower lanyard system. So
absolutely.
we're talking about people with physical disabilities, but there are so many people out there with cognitive disabilities,
Yes.
people with dementia, people with Parkinson's or vision loss, or disabilities that are hidden disabilities. And I've been working now for many years with on an international committee called DFOG, the Dementia Friendly Airport Working Group. It's based in Minnesota, but we are part of a larger international organization that works with the group out of England called the Sunflower Lanyard Scheme. In the United States, we don't call it a scheme because that got kind of a bad rap a few years ago. Thank you, Bernie.
Right.
But the Sunflower Lanyard system is an idea that came about out of London where folks that have a hidden disability will wear a green lanyard that they can get at participating airports or online that has a placard on it that doesn't say what's going on, but just says, I have a hidden disability. just a kind of a signal to the people at TSA or the airlines or participating participants that know what this system is, that says, I've got something going on, so please treat me with care, dignity, and respect. You don't get to push to the front of the line for any reason. You don't get special considerations, but you should get special care. And
Yes.
we've been training the TSA for several years with videos, with briefs, so that they've been trained to understand when people come through security that maybe they are slurring their speech a little bit. That might be aphasia. That might be Parkinson's. Maybe they're not following instructions as quickly as the TSA wants. Maybe that has to do with dementia. So if you've got one of these lanyards on, and the TSA understands that because SFO or Atlanta or MSP airports have been trained in this system, they will recognize that and understand that their caregiver has to stay with them through the process. They're not going to be whisking away your family member with dementia to go pat them down outside your range of view. They're not going to be, slamming that purse through the security porthole. And when your mom is saying, "Where's my purse?"
Right.
and you're saying, "Don't worry about it, mom," and freaking out, and
Yeah.
because it looks like it's going into a black hole. So, the folks are trained to understand this. Hopefully, we're working on it constantly.
Hmm.
It's one of my goals in life is to get everybody to know about this. So these lanyards you can get at the information booths at the airports before you go through, and you can also get them online. But it's the Sunflower Lanyard system, and the airlines are starting to find out about this. JetBlue is a subscriber. Lots of airlines and lots of agents, the pilots, the gate agents, are starting to recognize these and understand that folks do perhaps need a little more attention and should be following the program to provide a little more TLC. Okay.
That's fantastic. And I often wonder about that because, you see what happens with TSA. I mean, you're getting yelled at for like, get your stuff, open your bag. And especially with anyone with a cognitive issue. I mean, that it amps up the anxiety for both the person who has the condition and their care partner. I mean, you don't need that extra anxiety.
Yes, absolutely. Children with autism, you
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
anything like that. I mean, there was a woman who I got a call once in Montana and they said, "We need your help. You have to come to Phoenix. There's a lady who was not allowed to board an American Airlines flight because she was slurring." And they said, Unless you can articulate how you can self evacuate in case of an emergency, you are not allowed to board this airplane." And, that's against the rules, but
Yeah.
what is she going to do on her own? So I
Right.
wasn't able to help her, but because I train other people to become travel companions, I was able to line her up with one of the people that I have trained and certified and say, "Hey, I'm putting somebody from Denver on a plane to Phoenix tonight, and she will be able to get you to Portland tomorrow." Best I could do.
Thank goodness. I mean, thank goodness that you have those people.
Hmm.
So that's really the logistics of getting you on the plane and getting you to where you're going and then getting you off the plane where your destination is. So I'm thinking you have to have the same logistical thinking for both ends.
That's right. That's right. And it's going through the airport to plan that whole route. I always have Plan B in my head.
Of
So
course.
when I put together a trip, first I get the airline figured out. I get the seating figured out.
Mhm.
I figure out how I'm going to do the transportation, the ground transportation. I'm usually bringing my own wheelchair. When I have my own wheelchair, I can fold it up. I usually leave the person I have. I take a wheelchair even if they don't need it because it's just so much easier getting through the airport. My traveler is contained. I can take her into the or he into a companion care bathroom. I look for those. They're all over the airports now. They're nice. Some of them have adult changing tables now. Minneapolis has them.
Wow,
Hmm.
that's great.
And I make sure that they're used as often as I need them to be.
Mhm.
Um, I get to the airport in plenty of time. I go nice and slowly through the airport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, and getting from your car into the airport, that's a process as well.
Well, that's the thing. If I have a rental car or
Yeah.
my own car, I have to have a wheelchair because wheelchairs are not provided at the parking ramps. and they're not provided at the rental car agencies.
Mhm.
So that's always a tricky thing, is to get that individual to the terminal from there. So I have to figure that route out. And then once I get to and that's why I'll use an Uber a lot of times. Or if I'm using a shuttle, then I have to make sure that's accessible if I need that service, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, and then that person has to stay with me at all times too, if there is some kind of dementia or some situation where I have to have eyes on them at all times.
Mhm.
Because the bad things have happened when you let people go for a little bit, even. So, once I get to the airport, sometimes in advance, I'll call TSA because they have somebody called a passenger support specialist. And you can call and arrange to have an individual from TSA meet you and go with you through the airport. And that's especially good for people that are not professional travel companions because they can walk you through the system when you're not used to doing it. For me, I don't need it so much because I've done it 127 times now. I've been doing this for 9 years.
Wow.
So, but and I like and I can move forward myself fairly quickly. And sometimes they don't show up as quickly as you want them to.
Sure.
But otherwise, the passenger support specialist, you call TSA Cares. TSA Cares is the outfit that lines you up with a passenger support specialist who is supposed to be specially trained and sometimes even trained in the sunflower lanyard system, sometimes not, to take you through the airport and the TSA and get you through the other side.
Nice.
Wheelchair attendants are kind of iffy whether they aren't trained in the sunflower system. So the passenger support specialist isn't a wheelchair attendant, but a professional TSA agent.
Okay.
And we'll go with you with that wheelchair attendant.
That's
Okay.
wonderful. That's
Yeah.
great.
And once you get through, and I usually keep people in the chair all the way instead of trying to walk them through, even if it means a little bit more of a pat down, just because it's easier. And then to get to the gate in time to let the gate agent know that I've got somebody here that's got an issue.
Mhm.
And a lot of times I'll say to them, my individual has a sunflower lanyard on. This is for folks that have a cognitive disability or other hidden disabilities. And then I'll usually throw out and I'll
Yeah.
say arthritis or something because I don't necessarily want to say dementia right in front of them, and
Right. Right.
you know,
Right. No, I get you. It's not in front of your care partner. Right. You want them to feel good about going through, not feel like singled out. Yes. Yes.
yeah, dignity and respect. That's it all the way along. Uh-huh.
Yep. Yep.
And then pre-boarding and a nice comfortable flight, making sure that I have something that's going to be good to do with that individual, making sure that the staff understands that they can continue to speak to my traveler like a grown up. Just because they have something going on doesn't mean that they're talking to a child.
Exactly.
And all the way through having a good experience as much as possible, making sure that they have something. Maybe they don't speak English. A lot of folks with dementia lose their recent language and they revert back to Chinese or Spanish. So I have a translator. I can get Chinese Mandarin on my Delta movie screen. There's ways to make it really nice.
No, that's great.
And then on arrival, making sure that I have transportation lined up that's going to be reliable to get me to whatever.
Mhm.
If I'm going to meet family, I've got a communication system set up so the family's going to meet me at the airport.
Mhm.
That I have a wheelchair attendant hold on to your boarding pass because they're going to want to see that at the big airports. Even if I have my own wheelchair, or they a lot of times if they're going to take you from the gate to on the jetway, they want to see your boarding pass. So hold on to those silly boarding pass down to the baggage claim. So, yeah. So then that pretty much ends the trip.
What do you do with the wheelchair so it doesn't get damaged?
I usually take the pedals off. I mean, I always take the pedals off and I put it in a bag and I put it in the overhead compartment because those otherwise can fall off if you gate check it. I always gate check it.
Okay.
It does not count as any kind of luggage, right?
Mhm.
Anything that's medical doesn't count as luggage. So, say you're going on a cruise and you're going to have a CPAP machine. I'm bringing with me some distilled water. You can usually get that on a cruise, or I'm going on to any place that I have to have a CPAP. You can bring distilled water through TSA, even if it's more than 3.4 ounces, as long as you tell TSA.
Okay.
I've got that. I've got an oxygen machine. I've got a wheelchair. Any of that is medical equipment. And as long as TSA knows it, you can bring it on. It's not It's not something that's going to count against you as a carry-on or luggage.
Okay.
Delta has gotten really good about saying, "Fold your wheelchair up here and put it in our closet," because they know that there's been so much problems with damage to chairs, especially with power chairs, and the amount of press that they've gotten, bad press, not them, but airlines in general,
Right.
for damaging people's legs, otherwise known as their wheelchairs, because they are their legs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Gate check those wheelchairs. I take the pedals off. I try not to have pads or anything else on them. I use my wheelchair seatbelt to wrap it up tightly so that it's not coming undone and getting banged up. That's the best that I can do.
Yeah.
Hold it up as small as possible. Mine weighs 30 pounds. Yeah. Mhm.
That's great.
If you
Okay.
have a power chair, that's a whole nother thing. But there's a website that a Facebook page that I belong to called Accessible Travel Facebook page. And every day there's several people that get online talking about their wheelchairs and how they're packaging them up. These people travel all over the world constantly with all sorts of equipment.
Okay. What are you bringing in your carry-on that you're not going to check? What's important?
You have to have your medications in your carry-on. If you're moving cross country, a couple of days ago, I took a couple from San Francisco to New Jersey to Newark. So in their large suitcases, they had baggies full of pills, full of their pill bottles. But in the carry-on, I had their bubble packs for the next several days. For several days, have extra days. But those are what you're going to have with you because you're going to be possibly overnight. Even if you don't think you're going to be for several days, you need that. You're also going to have some extra incontinence products, perhaps, extra change of clothes, maybe a couple of toiletries, nothing over 3.4 ounces. I don't care if that giant tube of toothpaste only has a little bit of toothpaste in it, it's still too big.
Mhm.
There's the TSA does get a little bit weird about things like jellies or anything that you don't think is a liquid, but they might think it is.
Right. Right.
I actually got busted for having sharp cheddar cheese not too long ago. Liquid or sharp? Anything liquid or sharp? And I said no, and they said, "What's this?" And I got busted in Vermont for having sharp cheddar. So you never
Really?
know what you're going to get in trouble for.
Wow.
Just go with the flow. Just relax, and if they pull something aside, don't get too freaked out about it. But yeah, just some snacks. Sometimes they don't want you. They want you to claim what food you have lately. That's been just weird. So, just whatever is going to make what's going to be a comforting thing for you on the airplane, comfortable clothes, those kind of things. I always travel with a first aid kit because you never know when you're going to need a shoehorn and a pair of rubber gloves and those kinds of things. But that's me as a professional.
Yeah.
But bring a few things along for contingencies, a few snacks. You never know when you're going to be sitting on the tarmac for an extra hour, like I was 2 nights ago, because there was a lineup of planes that couldn't take off on time. But make sure you have your medications with you. A set of headphones. I bring the over the ear ones for folks that have hearing aids.
Okay. Again, planning, but be flexible.
Right.
You're anticipating. You're trying to anticipate. How do you handle bathroom requirements? Because it's going to be tough getting two people in those little bathrooms.
Right. And you don't have to have both of you in the bathroom. I mean, they're so small, I am the screen. When the flight attendants stand in front and block for the pilots using the bathroom,
Mhm.
I'm blocking for my traveler. And
Gotcha.
so all you need to do is get someone into the bathroom and help them pull down whatever they need to
Mhm.
to use the toilet and show them where the flush is and everything else if that's or do it for them. That's
Okay.
if they can walk to the toilet. If they can't use the toilet, and some folks, I end up moving people that cannot actually transfer at all. They cannot walk to get on an airplane. So they go from a wheelchair onto what's called an aisle chair, which is the skinny little thing that they can bring onto to a plane, which is it's important to be on the front of the plane because who wants to go all the way through to the back row on this little aisle chair, bumping their hips and everything else. So the aisle chair will take you to your seat with the flight attendant or the wheelchair attendants getting you to your seat. And then they'll transfer you to your seat. Now I have a sling, which is like a nylon hammock,
Mhm.
which I can lift up with handles on it, and like a hammock, and just slide you into your seat, lift you, slide you into your seat. And that's waterproof. A waterproof pad is useful too.
Okay.
Depends incontinence products. And then hopefully you have a short enough flight so there's not going to be a problem. And you've
Right.
used the bathroom, of course, at the family companion bathrooms before you get on. And then when you get off immediately. So, but if you can use the bathroom on the flight and you're close enough, and I hold on to that individual and carefully dance them up to the restroom, then that's the way that that usually works.
And then when it comes to hotels and lodging, you also have to plan ahead for that.
Absolutely. I use hotels more than VRBOs these days because of the extra fees and because you don't know what those hosts are going to hit you with at the end or accuse you of doing at the end. I've
Mm.
had some poor experiences, and I like concierges who can handle things and set fees. And hotels can be more predictable on what's accessible, although you don't really know what's an ADA room and what's not.
Right.
So if they say it's ADA, but it's sometimes the handrails are behind the toilets. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's important to perhaps maybe check the room out before you get there. You can call the hotel, ask for photos, get that information up front, check on some of the websites of people that have been to these hotels to see what they have to say about them. Get reviews on those.
Okay.
There are some VRBOs and some other different kinds of lodging that you can find
Yeah.
that would be good also. Like I said, there's specialty things coming out all the time for folks that are starting to be advertised. If you want to go to Hawaii, there are people out there in the hospitality industry that are starting to advertise, hey, here's a resort that's specially made for you. Here's accommodations,
Mhm.
cruise ships, you can get equipment on board, especially for you. It's called ship to shore. You can get hospital beds and raised toilet seats and Hoyer lifts and all sorts of
Really?
stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh right. It's great. I mean, I took a quadriplegic on a week-long cruise to the Caribbean, and man, we had a great time.
Really? And they got all the equipment was shipped there and they got it all set up for you and
Absolutely. Everything we didn't have, they brought along for us.
wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. You can have your dreams come true on these trips. And as I was talking about before, these folks need to be able to travel and should travel. I mean, there's an article that a gentleman from Australia wrote, a doctor, and it's called Tourism as a Treatment for Dementia,
Mm,
because family members want to have their seniors with them, want to have their family members with them, even if they are starting to suffer from cognitive decline. They want to have that person at a wedding to be in the pictures and to enjoy that opportunity. I mean, some people may not be right for that situation. There needs to be an assessment done. If they have some acting out, it might not be appropriate. But if it is a situation where that person might enjoy it and the family wants them there, it
mm,
could be a good thing for them. As long as they're physically active and able to do it, and the family wants them to go on a trip, and they can keep enjoying and living life to the fullest, there's no reason why that can't happen. And people with any kind of physical disabilities, Parkinson's, things like that, I took a gentleman on a trip to Mexico a few years ago to his favorite resort, and his vision loss, his macular degeneration was really starting to get the better of him, and he couldn't go with his girlfriend anymore. But we had a terrific time.
mhm.
So there's no reason why with the trip can still be safe and comfortable if you have a good caregiver that's with you.
Right.
And there are more people. I've trained 50 people in this business so far, or will be soon, to do these trips that safely and comfortably, because there's so many people out there that want to travel, and they can do it affordably, and it gives these folks that are the companions a trip to see some new places and to have these experiences, and it's just overall better for folks to have an opportunity to have new experiences, to enjoy their lives, and for other people on the outside to see folks traveling too.
Right.
When I brought this gentleman to the Fontainebleau in Florida, and he's in his power wheelchair, and he's sitting at dinner with me, and he's a normal, quote unquote, gentleman.
Right.
It's all good.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful and Of course, it's case by case recommendations, and depending on, of course, with dementia, depending on how far along you are and the entire thing, but it has to be looked at. And it's one of those things where it can bring some joy.
Certainly. And even when it goes wonky, like this
Yeah.
one woman I took to the airport, and she was the former minister and choir director, and she had a little bit of a freak out at the gate. And I tell you,
Mhm.
the gate agents and even the other passengers, it was towards the end of the boarding process, they were all wonderful and kind. So, don't be embarrassed if there is a little something going on, just because, your family member may not be following along with the program, and may have a little bit of acting out, have a good sense of humor about it. If you can go along with the flow, you'd be surprised how many people aren't going to necessarily make a nasty comment or roll their eyes, but just kind of give a little smile or maybe even help out a little bit.
Right.
People will be much kinder and pleasant than more than you think.
Now, obviously, you have a little more control with driving or taking a train or anything, but you can still adapt all of this to a car ride or a train ride.
Right.
It's still the same type of logistical planning.
Certainly, yeah. I've done both. I have done a long distance train ride. I didn't prefer that because number one, they're very expensive. And actually, from Minnesota, the best viewing is going west, and those trains go at night, and so you can't see anything. I don't know why Amtrak does it that way. And there's a lot of stops, so it takes a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's accommodations on trains that work for people that want to do that kind of route. And I do have some of the trainees and certified travel companions that have worked with me and for me have done long distance drives. I've done a few of them too. I've taken a couple
Mhm.
from Minnesota down to Sanibel and just drove them through the beautiful country of Tennessee.
Mhm.
Yeah, just if you can find accessible bathrooms along the way, if you need them, make sure you're going at the
Mhm.
right pace. Smell the roses along the way.
No, absolutely. And, you should stop every few hours because it's important to get out and walk around and
Absolutely. Same with on the airplane. I make sure that my
yeah.
people have compression socks, that they're keeping their feet up, that they're walking around the plane. Get that blood flowing the whole time. Make sure your doctor knows how far you're going, and make sure you know what's medically required to make this trip as safe and prepared as you can have it.
Yeah. Well, and that was lead me right into it,
Mhm.
Carol. It's important to discuss these things with your doctor depending on the condition your care partner is living with, correct?
Absolutely, you're right. So I have this, I don't know, 9-page assessment form that I go through with the family. I send it to them. I usually do a lot of questions up front. I mean, I need to know if they're speaking English, what their weight is, whether or not they have ID. I mean, just because you don't have an ID anymore because you lost it doesn't mean you can't fly someplace. Who knew? A lot of people think, oh, you're stuck someplace because you don't have an ID and trying to get one is impossible.
Yeah.
No, that's not a problem. Actually, the TSA doesn't really care that much. As long as you have a bottle of pills and a photograph on something or the other, you're okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and you want to talk to the whoever's been recently taking care of this individual, if possible, and see what their behavior is, if there's some issues about that, what their medications are,
Mhm.
just habits, food things that are going on, all of that stuff, medical clearances, especially all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's important to get all of that down to as much as humanly possible so you can be prepared and so you can set up your plan B in case there is a situation.
Right. What made you get into this?
Well, I was a professional guardian and conservator for 28 years. So I was managing the healthcare decisions and the finances of seniors, which I started doing when my dad had a stroke at age 56. So I started with him after I got done practicing law for 10 years, which was really boring for me. And I did that for many people for many years. And then I just decided I wanted to start traveling when my kids grew up, and I wanted to do it with seniors because they really needed the help. And my parents did. And so I thought other parents need to have this help. So I just started out in my communities in Minnesota and found out that there were a lot of people that I knew that thought this was a great idea. So I started small, and the next thing you know, I was getting calls from all over the place. And I started with a website, and I'm getting calls from Helsinki and Tasmania and you name it. So next thing you know,
Wow.
I've got a call from somebody in Denver saying, "Go get my husband in Bulgaria. He's kind of stuck there and his visa's running out." So,
Oh my
I've been to
goodness.
14 countries and 43 states. And um, yes, I've done 127 trips, but I just saw a real need there, a need for people with seniors and people with disabilities to have a professional caregiver, professional companion to do these trips, because there's family members, but sometimes there's not. Sometimes people forgot to have kids, or their kids don't get along with them, or their kids have lives and dogs and children and things like that.
If you had one thing to say to a caregiver in this situation, what would you say?
I say do some research. Look on my website, look on the Dementia Friendly Airport website. There's a lot of information out there. You do not need to invent the wheel. People really want to make this easier for you. It's becoming a really big thing now for the world to recognize that folks want to, need to, and should be out traveling, enjoying life, making the most of their golden years, as we say. So just go for it. And I think everybody should go out and do whatever it is that makes them happy. And if it's traveling, they should do it. And I think that it's a wonderful way to see the world, to experience life, and to get to know different cultures, and to keep making memories. And the world's just a better place for travel. And it gives you something to talk about with everybody all the time. So there's no reason not to do it. I mean, a little bit of fear, and some people don't want to. Okay, I get that. But go out and take a chance. Some people aren't gonna really be ready for it anymore, but if you can, why not?
A big thank you to Carol Giuliani for being my guest today. For more information about Carol, her travel companion services, travel tips, and resources, visit seniortravelcompanionservices.com. I hope you enjoyed our podcast today. Head over to daughterhood.org and click on the podcast section for show notes, including the full transcript and links to any resources and information from today's episode. You can find and review us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Daughterhood the Podcast. Feel free to leave me a message and let me know what issues you may be facing and would like to hear more about. Or even if you just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. Also, a very special thank you to Susan Rowe for our theme music, the instrumental version of her beautiful song Mama's Eyes from her album Lessons in Love. I hope you found what you were looking for today: information, inspiration, or even just a little company. This is Roseanne Corcoran. I hope you'll join me next time in Daughterhood.